Perfect. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Don't mind the username shows. Make sure I don't get harassed. Yeah, no worries. Go Suns, go for sure. We're just waiting on Will to join, so we're just gonna talk about the draft. Wait for Bennett, the lazy butt. He's still making his supper. What the hell? What's wrong with that guy? But yeah, we'll wait for Bennett to show up. Will's gonna be here in about 10 minutes, so we're looking forward to that. And yeah, for now we're just gonna talk about the draft. Oh, Bennett's actually already here. Bennett, welcome.
Oh, damn.
Oh, he's got the Sens jersey on. Hey, Ray, bro, what's up?
Not the new one, but that's still getting the name put on. But I dug into the archives.
I mean, genuinely one of the best jerseys that they've had in a long time.
So. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the cream white one was a great jersey as well.
Oof. So true.
I still got the legendary Bobby Ryan on mine.
Hell yeah, man. That guy's a local legend.
Love that guy. But yeah, what's up, chat? This is weird. This is new for us. This is new. Not used to this.
I think it was really funny that Matt was like, "What's up, chat?"
It's the Twitch streamer in me.
Drift Shade, it's definitely not me. Because if it was, you would like me a whole lot more.
Oh, wow. For all those wondering, Will is going to be joining us in about 8 or 9 minutes. I know you didn't come for us.
But please stay. Please stay.
But please stay, for the love of God. Yeah. So 1 week removed from the Senators draft, do you guys have any changes in your thoughts on who the Sens took, especially 10th overall with Tyler Boucher?
Did I have any change in yeah, I mean, I still really would have enjoyed a really sort of game breaking talent like Fabian Lysell, for example. Hell, even like Atu Ratu, who went in the second round, just put up 14 points in 6 games in that showcase. But you know what? I think Tyler Boucher really absolutely, you can see him mad off. But I mean, Tyler Boucher actually showed me a lot of the excellent skills that he has to offer, for sure. One thing I really noticed about him was his ability to sort of get into like the open space and get a shot off. And you saw that with this goal he scored against, I believe it was Finland. And he's a physical frickin' player. He loves hitting things.
He throws that body.
Yeah.
I think it was Everyday Sense, and there were a couple other people that spoke to Chara account. There were a few people posting clips of Boucher, and man, he was lighting people up on the ice, and probably got a few penalties for crossing the line. But
yeah.
Oh wow, man, I don't know. I love the physicality he brings. It's definitely still like a Dorian Trent Mann and Co. pick at 10th overall there, but
yeah,
I mean, hopefully he develops into a similar player to Brady Tkachuk. I know we already have a Brady Tkachuk, but he's going to Boston next year. He's playing with the Terriers. He's going to be on the team that Brady was on before Brady joined the NHL. So hey, who knows? It could be a nice little pick there.
And what's better than one Brady Tkachuk than a second Brady Tkachuk on the opposite wing?
Exactly. Yeah. 2 Bradys are better than one. Drift Shade's asking if we think that the production issues from Boucher were legit issues or just him regaining form from injury. What do you guys think?
That dude was injured so much. Like insane amounts of injuries. I think he had COVID-19. He had
and pneumonia.
Yeah. Well, I think they go hand in hand at this point. No, we'll get there. Crucifier 666. Don't you worry about that. Yeah, I definitely think that probably screwed over a lot of his production in the U.S. National Development Program. But I think at the same time, you'll be able to see him going to the NCAA and his style of play definitely benefits the. Also, don't apologize for your name, man. I think it's great. I think that his style of play definitely benefits the NCAA because it's a very physical league. It's not like hugely high scoring. You'll see guys who are going to jump into the NHL at the end of the year, sort of thing, and they only have 35, 40 points. But what he brings on the ice will definitely be beneficial to the team that he's going to be playing for at BU.
Yeah, and good point brought up by Ray Bro. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Ray Bro brings up a good point. There were rumblings that Boucher was going to be taken at the 12-13 spot, or maybe 16 by the
Rangers. Yeah.
So it's possible that the Senators knew that, had heard rumblings that he was going to be taken after their pick, didn't want to risk trading back, or maybe the team that they were willing to trade back with, they were afraid we're going to take Tyler Boucher. So at the end of the day, they just said, you know what, let's not play any mind games. Let's just take the guy we want. And they did.
Yeah.
And Crucifire, we will talk about Wallstead maybe a bit later, but it's a good question. It's a good question to ask.
Oh, I can't. Don't worry, Crucifier. I'll get to that. I have a lot of opinions about him. But yeah, I think Driftshade, you kind of hit it on the head. The Rangers were probably one of the most prominent teams that wanted him, and they might even be stupid enough to ask him to come play for them, because. I think somebody said it perfectly on Twitter, is like, I don't usually use the word rent-free, but Tom Wilson is definitely living rent-free in the minds of the Rangers. Oh, he basically had an organizational shift from one game. Like, it's pretty incredible that he had such an effect. I mean, fuck Tom Wilson. Wait, can we swear on a live stream? Are we allowed to do that?
There's rules, but I don't think.
Wait, what are the rules?
Well, I mean, the obvious when it comes to, like derogatory stuff, but swear words are all good.
Oh yeah, no, and also
just
Matt,
the general
we don't
rules
use
of real life etiquette. Yeah.
No, we don't. For anybody asking, we don't. But I wanted to clarify that was not a thing for this stream. So Will should be joining us in a few minutes. Maple Jelly asks, do you think that Sens took Boucher because they knew other teams were interested in him? And even though that's an extremely sicko thing to do, was it the right move? Now, we'll answer that, but we're actually getting joined by Will right now. So, let's get Will in here. Boom.
There he is.
There he is. The man and the mythical legend, Will Scouch.
Good evening, friends. How are you?
Will. We were just talking about how Tyler Boucher was the better pick over Jesper Wallstead.
That was not said.
I got a nice glass of wine to get me through this one here.
A delightful Chardonnay.
Yeah, a delightful Pinot, actually.
Okay.
Classy,
well, I'm sorry, man.
Wow.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, it came in the big jug too. Top shelf, big jug, $11. You know how
damn.
Will walks around
Big
with
money.
Magnums, always ready to go.
Not for a while. I'm in my 30s now. I can't do that anymore.
Oh my god.
So Tyler Boucher.
Yeah, well, we'll jump off because everyone in the comments are already talking about Tyler Boucher. So I guess it's a good place to start. And it makes sense because the Senators took him well before anyone thought he would be taken at 10th overall. Tyler Boucher to the Sens. So, Mr. Will, you were obviously tracking Tyler Boucher, and what do you have to say about him?
Okay. So first of all, he didn't play enough for me to track him. I did watch him a bunch. I tried watching as many games that he played that weren't against like the Youngstown Phantoms, which was not a great team in the USHL. But he did play a couple of games like against Chicago, and I think there was a Des Moines game. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Nobody likes Des Moines anyway.
Yeah,
right?
whatever. I've been to
Corn.
Iowa.
That's it.
It's okay. But okay, look, I mean, I think with Tyler Boucher, the thing that's really interesting is that people are automatically just like completely piling all over the Ottawa Senators for making that decision. And
hell yeah.
Like on one hand, I get it. But when I was watching Tyler Boucher during the week before the draft, I was sort of thinking, okay, like I could see, because I knew that people were catching on to him and he was rocketing up charts and stuff here and there. I could see a universe where if he played the full season, he'd be in my first round, like late first, something like that. That, like somewhere in the same vicinity as guys like Brennan Othman. I'm looking at my list now, like Prokhor Poltapov might have been a guy that I could have thought about in the late first. Assume it, judging by my list. Maybe someone up the alley of, I don't know, like a Corson Ceulemans, where I'm sitting back and I'm going like, I don't see a massive ceiling player here who's going to like overwhelm any other team or whatever, but I do see a functional player on a club who does bring some aspects that you want to have. And like, the thing that I love about him is that he's just, he's a physical guy, but there's also skill and some good edges on him. He can create space pretty well. And there's some stuff about him where I'm going, okay, like if he had a full year without being hurt, I could see him being a guy drafted much higher than where I had him ranked, which was like, I think 51 or 50 or something, which is like a really soft 50-51 because he's such a low sample. So I think that my and I'm not just trying to like massage it. Like I think that for Ottawa at 10, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like who they passed on. Like the thing I use in when I look at drafts and like, yes, on one hand you can say the things aren't done yet. Like these guys haven't developed, there's time, blah blah blah. Like so the experts can say one thing, but that doesn't mean they're right, which I totally understand. I'm probably wrong more often than not. But on the other hand, you can judge the talent that was left on the board in pursuit of what is something very specific that Ottawa seems to be looking for. Like it seems like their whole, ever since Brady Tkachuk was drafted,
they love the big boys, man. They love hits.
It's simpler than that. I think even it's like, I think as soon as they drafted Brady Tkachuk and he became a fan favorite and a coach favorite and started producing pretty well at both ends, everybody in that organization went, "That's the guy we want. We want 23 Brady Tkachuks, and we don't care."
And one Tim Stützle.
Yeah, so like they load up their back end with a bunch of big, heavy guys. They ostracize Eric Brandstrom to the Shadow Realm. They, they draft Tim Stützle because you can't not.
Yeah.
And they get their big, rangy defenseman in Jake Sanderson. But overall, they seem to be looking at, if we can't find a Brady Tkachuk, then we'll move on to something else. But that's what we want. And they did that at 10th overall. Like they went out and got, like it seemed to me they were thinking, if it's not Mason McTavish or someone like that, we're going to go in a completely different direction that's up the same alley. And there isn't a ton of that at the 17, 18-year-old age group because that style of play is, not super common with young players. So I think they just sort of thought of it as like, all right, we have Brady Tkachuk on one line, Tyler Boucher on the other, and we're going to annoy the piss out of every single NHL hockey team, which, fine, cool. But on the other hand, Tim Stützle setting up Cole Sillinger for one-timers on the power play for the next 10 years is a terrifying thought for me. If I'm in the
But I'm just putting this one out there.
Yes.
Roby. That's it.
Oh my God.
Roby Yarventi is that guy.
You've got one. All right, you got one.
I mean, Igor Sokolov.
Cool.
He's kind of he's a good dude. He's
like
just
30 years old.
He's good vibes, man.
Whoa.
No, I'm kidding.
No, only Kaprizov is 30 years old. What the hell?
Right.
No. Kaprizov's 82. Let's just get that one straight.
Yeah.
If we're applying the same scale here, yeah.
So to me, it's like it's an extremely questionable decision because I think that there's a lot of other just objective value that you could add. That, like, to me, the Ottawa Senators need more firepower.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a lot of that snarl and a lot of that physical side of it. And like, as much as I like Brady Tkachuk, like I do really like him as a player, and I love Tim Stützle, but I feel like you still need more. And I don't see Tyler Boucher as a guy that will play up the middle, at least not right now. And it's just a huge risk. Like, that's the biggest thing, is at 10th overall, you don't want to mess up. And when you usually, like, I was so convinced that at the very, very most conservative side of my head, there were 20 guys in this draft that were a step ahead of the rest. Tyler Boucher did not cross my mind once that he was in that group, but he could be one of the more, like, maybe like a playmaker version of like a Josh Anderson, which is not like, and that's being optimistic, where he's got speed and skill, but physical ishness to him with like okay puck management, but there's a nice balance of traits there. Like I've seen people calling him like Tom Wilson, and I just don't believe that. But I could see that kind of a Josh Anderson style finesse power winger there. But yeah, I mean, I think that with Ottawa, like the goal for me in this draft at 10th overall, judging by who was available there, would have been maybe firepower and Tyler Boucher. I mean, maybe Tyler Boucher's gone by 17 or the Rangers take him or whatever. But at that point, it's like, well, okay, like too bad. You know, I feel like you can probably plug that hole with personality and grit and snarl elsewhere and laugh while you take a guy who scored almost 2 points per game by himself in the USHL and a Cole Sillinger or whoever else you want to insert at that pick that was different than Tyler Boucher. But I'm not the expert. I'm not Trent Mann. I get it. But it was shocking.
And Will, you probably remember getting a DM from me when it happened, and I was drunk at a cottage, and I was like, "Fucking Tyler Boucher, are you kidding me?" It's definitely rough, and I think there were a lot of options there, and I know that like the Sens Twitter was trying to manifest Chaz Lucius onto this team, and I definitely think when you speak about firepower, that's sort of one of the guys that was there. Hell, like Fabian Lysell was still there, and
for a while after.
and that one bummed me out because like Will loves Fabian, so I was like, yeah, I like Fabian too. Then
the thing about Fabian Lysell though is the Ottawa Senators would have no interest in a guy like that. I don't think. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Ottawa Senators, as they are now, just like D&D'd him and just said we're not interested. Because I think but I think there's genuine reasoning behind that. I know that wouldn't have been the only team that did it. Like I know that Lysell he's an extraordinarily talented player. But I've been told by multiple people across the board, like there's an on-ice version of Fabian Lysell and an off-ice version of Fabian Lysell. And if you do not think you can handle or malleate or like move around the off-ice version to match up with that on-ice version, you're going to get a guy who probably like he's a guy who's going to be as good as he wants to be. But in terms of wanting to be that as good as he could be, like will involve improving as a person and as a teammate and as a coachable player.
Yeah.
But I mean, personally, that doesn't scare me as much as it does to a lot of NHL teams. But and I know Don Sweeney was on the record after the draft and was like, I haven't heard anything bad about him, so I'm glad we just got him. So cool, let's see what happens. Which great. But I could absolutely see why Ottawa would look at that situation and that kind of a polarizing side of it and lean on the side of like, we don't want to bring that into the organization. We don't want to blah, blah, blah. Like we just want to stick to our guns and draft a guy from the NTDP that plays the way we want right now. And we don't, you know, and I feel like Lysell might not even be a good fit. Like he's a good player, but I just don't think, again, he doesn't fit that Ottawa Senators brand of play. I don't think that they kind of ideally want to look for.
Now, we had a few questions come in just before you joined, and we were talking about it a little bit. One came in from Maple Jelly, and they basically said, do you think the Sens took Boucher because they knew other teams were interested in him? And even though that's an extremely sicko thing to do, was it the right move? Now, we kind of touched on this and said we don't necessarily think it was the right move, but it was definitely the Sens move to make. So
yeah. So this is, again, just my opinion. I would never in a million years, especially at the 10th overall pick, draft a player that is a reach just because someone else is going to reach on them behind me. I would never, ever do that. The 10th overall pick, like with the guys available this year, that even the guys that were slipping, you know, like Dylan Guenther was the pick that went off the board right before him. And it's mind bending to me. Like I've seen Tyler Boucher play a few times this year, and I've said, if he had played a whole season, could be a first round pick. I could easily see that, but he didn't, and he got hurt multiple times, I think, this year, and that's a gamble on its own. But then you also think like, well, I've seen Dylan Guenther play a lot. I've seen Cole Sillinger play. I've seen, you know, like Logan Stankoven was at 14 on my board, and he went 47th overall, and like. I mean, I've seen a lot more out of him that was more impressive than what I was seeing out of Tyler Boucher. It's just, I think the priorities for what Ottawa is looking for is outside the scope of what typically is evaluated in the draft. They're looking for someone that fits a very specific checklist. And so personally, I wouldn't have picked him. Like, I wouldn't have picked him because you can get players that play like that in the NHL. You can, and they're not nearly as expensive as guys like, if a guy like Cole Sillinger hits his ceiling, or if a Jesper Wallstedt hits his ceiling. Like, even if Tyler Boucher hits his ceiling, you know, you might have other guys in that range that are I don't know. Maybe the argument is that Eugene Melnyk just doesn't want to pay him a big salary, and they don't want to draft big salary potential players. Which, okay, fine. But then what are you doing? Like, what's the point of owning a hockey team if you're not going to draft players that are going to be paid a lot of money, because those are the ones that win? I don't know. I think he's going to be one of those annoying playoff guys. I certainly wouldn't have picked him at 10 just to get ahead of other teams, because I think there is such a thing where other teams also have the same flaws with their strategy. But I can't say I know for sure. And we'll see where we're at in 5 years, because I don't know. Who knows?
All right. Well,
I think sorry, if I can just jump in for a second. I think the thing that worries me the most, and you touched on this a little bit, Will, is that it's becoming increasingly obvious that the Sens only like to draft one kind of player, unless if their hand is forced, like it was last year with the 3 and 5 picks, to like, they could not, like, if I said this in our episode last week, if like GM Pierre Dorion had picked anyone other than Stutzler with the number 3 pick, like, he'd just literally be fired. Like, you can't not do that.
Yeah.
But as soon as they're out of that top 5 range, I feel like they only have one kind of guy, one kind of archetype that they want to go for, and that's what worries me.
Yeah, I don't think it's that boiled down. Like, I look at what Ottawa drafted this year, and I think they did make some nice picks later on. I think that in terms of what they look at, like, I think they weigh things. Like, I think when you build a draft philosophy, it's about how you weigh various traits. Like, as opposed to saying all of these players that play this way are D&Ds, we don't want to touch them. I think it's more like they look at guys like Boucher, Ostapchuk, and Roger, or whatever. I've never seen Ben Roger play hockey outside of the PBHH, whatever. But those 3 guys, you know, those guys do fit that checklist of what Ottawa seems to be looking for. But then they kind of changed gears and went in a bit of a different direction, more of that Josh Norris, you know, Drake Batherson kind of offensive skill, swings in the dark. And I mean, those 2 guys, like, I would have taken Johansson and Latimer over Ben Roger every day. And Zach Ostapchuk, I like Zach Ostapchuk, but at 39, that's pretty nuts. And so, but again, it's I think you're right in the sense of, like, that's their focus. Like, their primary focus seems to be this Montreal Canadiens brand of, you know, admirable physicality, and you just don't really, you know, you don't mind when you don't have the puck, because you're just going to crush the other team and annoy them until you get it back, which is fine. And I think that in the playoffs that can work. But then but again, like, it's about what you're leaving on the board and the potential impact in terms of, you know, like, yes, the Tampa Bay Lightning had some of those meat and potatoes guys, but people are forgetting that they still also had a lot of guys who are just pure scoring offense guys, and all of their defensemen aren't Josh Brown clones. All their defensemen aren't Artyom Zub clones. They're dynamic 200-foot guys, and they just have skill and offense to them as well as that strong physical defense. So I don't know. We'll see how it works out. I can't say anything that's like, I'm not going to label the Ottawa Senators like an F franchise like so many people have. I'm not going to do that. I think that that's really unfair, but I do think that Ottawa is experimenting in ways that I think is extremely risky. But what else is hockey for?
Yeah, I think it's funny. You know, Trent Mann recently was asked, I think by, you know, one of the guys at TSN 1200, essentially saying, like, you know, if you hadn't been here for 5 years, would you make a pick like that on Tyler Boucher, or would you go more consensus? And he was like, well, actually, you know, that's a good question. I'd probably go more consensus. But then I always go back to the Lassie Thompson pick. You know, like, that one doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, he was a reach then. You know, he's probably, you know, 8th or 6th to 8th on our prospect rankings. So I think, and he is a meat and potatoes type defenseman, and like his shtick is he has a big shot.
Yep.
So it's. Well, yeah. I mean,
sorry, I couldn't help.
No, that's totally fair. I mean, like he hits the puck hard.
And the problem with that, to me, like I knew that going into that draft, and I was absolutely blown away that Lassie Thompson went 19th.
Yeah.
And again, it was the exact same thing. It's like you don't know the day of, you can't judge a draft the day of, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like you're right. But I have seen him play a lot of hockey.
Yeah.
And he's clunky on his feet. He's clunky defensively. He's clunky with his puck movement. The only thing that I can really say is like, holy crap about him is that when the puck is in his hands in the offensive zone, he can really shoot it. And to me, a defenseman that their best trait is their shot, to me, that's not good.
It's like Shea Weber has a really hard shot.
Yeah.
But he's also an elite defenseman.
Yes.
So, like, yes, everybody's aware that Shea Weber's shot is the hardest in the league, but he's also an elite defenseman. And I remember watching the World Juniors post-draft and when Lassie was the captain, like, you could see the flaws.
Yeah.
Like, there. So, I think it's always tough. And, you know, hopefully Tyler Boucher does make that USA World Juniors team, just so Ottawa fans have something more to look forward to. Is it doubtful? Probably. But who knows? I think there was a question from Drift Shade that I wanted to sort of look at, and it was, do you think that it's because you get safe NHLers that fit the Ottawa market narratives?
By doing what the Senators are doing?
Yeah.
Maybe, but like, again, it's not about, like, the prospect of safety in the NHL draft drives me nuts. Like, not sassing the question at all. It's the idea that you can go into the draft and think this person is safe. I think that is, to me, kind of a bit of a misnomer. Like, I think safety in the NHL draft, like, to me, Fabian Lysell is a safe pick, because even if his offensive game doesn't quite catch up to what he's clearly capable of with his feet and his hands and his brain, he shows enough energy at both ends of the ice where if he's okay with not being a premier offensive player, he'll be a great 200-foot winger for the Boston Bruins. Like, that to me is a safe pick, because you can say you have the potential to be a top 6 guy, but based on the fundamentals of your game now, you might end up a bottom 6 guy, but a really, really, really good one. And to me, that's safety. With Tyler Boucher, I don't think it's the same thing. I think safety with Tyler Boucher, I don't see Tyler Boucher as a first-line guy, a guy that you throw over the boards 20 minutes a night. And usually those are the guys that you draft top 10, the guys that you can throw over the boards 20 minutes a night. And yes, you can say this year's draft is sketchy and greasy and unpredictable, but I frankly disagree with labeling it that the day of the draft. Or the months leading into the draft. I think there's a lot of really talented players that are flawed but could work it out. With Tyler Boucher, I think there's safety in the sense of, like, you kind of know what he's going to be. You know, you kind of can tell already, like, unless there's significant improvements in his puck management and offensive play in terms of using the sort of fundamentals he's got, you're probably looking at a really interesting third-line guy, which is fine, but, like,
it's the 10th overall pick.
Yeah, and sometimes when I hear safety, I think people look at guys who play like middle 6 role hockey and junior hockey and go, well, if they just do that in the NHL, then they'll be fine. But again, people really misunderstand, I think, just how hard the NHL is and how quickly value in the draft drops off. So, like, even if Tyler Boucher is rated as a late first-round pick, being optimistic like he was on Bob McKenzie's list, usually late first-round picks are like either fringe NHLers or like bottom 6 guys generally. Not always, but generally. And maybe they're ahead of the curve on Boucher. I think he's going to be a capable, physical power winger in the NHL one way or the other. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about. I think the pursuit of safety is something that I'm always questioning, because I think that it's a simple thing to say, but I think what you're actually trying to say is very complicated and much more difficult to actually pinpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll we'll see.
So I know we've been focusing on Tyler Boucher for quite a bit.
How can you
About
not?
20 minutes.
Boucher,
there's
baby. Let's
there's
go.
one more thing that I'll bring up here in the comments, and it was also by Drift Shade. And they basically said, what do you think of Friedman's quote that this is where analytics miss? They don't understand the skin in the game, the organizational pressures, how your fan base connects with your players.
I don't know what that means, honestly. Like, like I don't really know what that means. Like the point of having a hockey franchise is to have a good hockey team, and the things that indicate a good hockey team are literally analytics. Like that's literally what
it's facts.
It's a general. It's giving you the probabilities that point you in the direction of you might not win 82 games a year if you have a 90% Corsi percentage, but you'll win a lot of games. Like it's not saying like automatically the team. I don't think there's a single statistic or anything or metric you can boil down that says this is the best player in the league, this is the best team in the league. And I do agree that the NHL playoffs are a completely different breed from the regular season. But that, like, to me, that quote is basically just like, I don't know about carrying water, but it's more about,
yeah.
I can see how like a pressure from within the organization could pressure people to make decisions they don't want to make on the hockey ops side. But yeah,
I think this question was in relation to the Werenski signing.
I missed that tidbit to it, but
that makes sense.
Yes.
I think there's a lot more to that. With Zach Werenski, like that. I mean, they're giving out a lot of money to defensemen, but there is. I think on one hand that's true. Obviously, if you have guys like Zach Werenski, you got to keep them. And I think that the amount of money they gave him was a lot. And I think that you do. If you're a team like Columbus, you are in a bit of a position of weakness where, I don't know if this is true. Like personally, I wouldn't mind playing pretty much anywhere. But if I think there's a perfect reality where some players are just like Columbus. Why would I want to play hockey in Columbus? And it's like, I've been to Columbus and I really enjoyed it. I was surprised, but it's not my place to tell a player to like shut up and accept it. And if that's what it takes to give a player that kind of money, then yeah, like that's true. And there obviously any off-ice thing, analytics has nothing to do with it. And if Zach Werenski and his agent is sitting there being like, you just lost Seth Jones, and like if you don't want me to be here, like if you think that I'm only worth like $7 or $8 million a year, and Seth Jones just got paid $9.5 million, and my agent has all the analytics to show how bad Seth Jones was this year, and you want to keep me in Columbus, then yeah, you better pay me. Like that's just negotiation. Like I think that there's just other factors outside of hockey. It's like how people complained that Lou Lamoriello won GM of the year, and to them he did nothing this year. It's like, well, yes, but I think that since other GMs vote on that award, there's other things that go into that job that other GMs are aware of, whether you agree or not. Like there are things that aren't hockey related, or at least on the ice related, that go into being a good general manager, in my view. So I think with that kind of a Werenski thing, it's like, yeah, setting the hockey aside, there are definitely factors that affect that obviously analytics can't catch. So 100%, yeah.
Now, I guess Drift Shade followed that up by asking how much do you think that same discussion relates to drafting when it comes to that situation?
Well, you have to sell the kids on your program. You have to I don't know, like if you're in a place like Columbus, I think it is a legitimate question. It's part of the reason why I'm not a huge fan of looking at these first and second round picks and drafting them. Like if I could, I'd probably have a system of free market entry level signings, obviously with rules in place to prevent teams from stockpiling young players, but like some sort of system that replaces the elite of the elite draft, like guys that are ready for an ELC right away. I think there's room for that in the NHL. It's radical, but then you have a supplementary draft for the rest of the guys, and it's the normal thing there. Because I think that it is a bit difficult if you are like Ottawa or Columbus and you're selling kids on, like, yeah, you can come play for the Ottawa Senators where, everyone yells about how bad our owner is and we are down the street from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like that on its surface is a bit of a tougher sell than say Toronto or LA or, San Jose or Vancouver, or take your pick, whatever wonderful place in the world that plays hockey, whatever place there that is. But I do think that that's also on the onus of the teams to basically, you can ask the kid and say, you're playing hockey in Columbus, Ohio. What do you think of that idea? But you could also just do a little bit of work and try to share with them like what it's like being there, and get some players who enjoy being there and tell them, it's about how you handle the situation. But in terms of the specific, lost my train of thought. But in terms of the specific draft strategy angle, it's a factor. And I think that it could mean, like, if a kid tells you, how would you feel about playing for the Ottawa Senators? And I'm like, well, I'd rather be playing for the Leafs because it's the Leafs. And I'd be like, well, okay, then F you too, like, frig off. All right, great. Next. And you obviously don't want that, especially at 10th overall. So it factors in for sure, especially depending on the team that you are.
All right. Well, we've gotten a few questions about Latimer and some of the other later draft picks by the Sens, so we'll move on to the second round. I think there was a lot there about Tyler Boucher that people can dissect or go back to after the stream's done. But so in the second round at 39 overall, they took Zach Ostapchuk, big boy out of the WHL.
Big boy.
And another pick where the Senators draft him because they say he's big and he's got skill. So what do you think about that pick?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a bit about Boucher v. Josh Anderson earlier. I mean, now that I think about it, that's probably not the most apt description because you have Zach Ostapchuk. Like, I think with the Ostapchuk, he's similarly framed as a Josh Anderson, and I think plays a similar game where Anderson isn't the most, like, finessed, skilled player. Like, he's not the most creative player with the puck on his stick, but he's got a really nice combination of skill and physical force and just straight line speed that can be kind of hard to counter, and that can lead to quite a few goals. I think with Ostapchuk, there's a playmaking angle to him that is really unique. Like, he's one of the guys that stuck out to me late in the year because he's like 6'4" or something, but he makes these really complicated centering passes that are weird angles with his stick. Like, he'll go behind the back and like put it in front of the net just to get around defensive checking, and like that's pretty high end, like, problem solving, and it's unique, and we'll see how it works. If he was 5'8" and doing that, then that would be great. To me, that would be like a projectable, you need 5'8", 5'9" guys thinking on their toes and thinking creatively to get around pressure, but he's doing it at 6'3", 6'4". I think that's an interesting pick at 39. Like, I had him ranked a lot later, but I was just unfamiliar with him, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see a team take a reach on him, and I think he's a decent fit for the Senators. Like, I think he's going to be in that sort of Tyler Boucher world where he's kind of, maybe a third line guy. I think maybe Boucher is maybe on your second line or something, but Ostapchuk is definitely not just like a big schlub who can't do anything. He's a mobile, skilled guy who's creative with the puck on his stick. He's pretty absent defensively for a big guy. You kind of wish you see more out of him there, but he's pretty, give me the puck, I'll skate it in a straight line, get it up the ice, and make a play in the offensive zone, and that's it. And that's cool. Like, you can round out a game around that, I think. So I don't mind that pick at all at 39. I think there were some players that were better. Like,
wasn't Ratu still there?
Ratu, Stankoven.
Yeah.
There were a lot of players still available that I would have pushed for much Ostapchuk. But if it's the Ottawa Senators and they're looking for that brand of player, he probably is one of the better ones in the draft that I think is actually kind of projectable at NHL pace. But in terms of how much of his offense projects, I don't know. But he has all the tools to make it work. It'll just, time will tell. I think he'll be a player, but we'll see how much of an offensive player he will be, and if his defensive game can sort of ramp up and catch up to the offensive side.
From what I understand, too, he missed a ton of time before the COVID season, or I believe he got injured like before the COVID season this season, and then it's complicated. I think he went like 12 months without playing or something like that. And when he got back, I remember reading a quote where the GM of the Giants was like, he was a different player once he got back here. And I think that's sort of a cool idea to think about, especially considering if he like came back, was a better offensively and improved his defensive game. That'd be nice if he does that in the future. But it's also kind of leads us into the next pick of Ben Roger, who literally came back, with a ham in his body because he put on 35 pounds, which is insane. Do you know much about Mr. Roger?
Yeah, I mean,
can you in particular speak to his neighborhood?
Yeah. Pluralize that boy,
I haven't been very familiar with that neighborhood in a long time. Not young boy. But I did watch him at the Peterborough tournament or the PBHH tournament, whatever the hell that thing was that they did. He was a guy. I don't know. He's big and there's a bit of range to him. I don't know. Again at 49, I just have I didn't see anyone even considering. I don't think I had Ben Roger ranked enough, and I tracked 22 separate lists for rankings.
Yeah, I believe he was 53. Like he was a projected versus like Pronman's mock draft. He went 53 spots.
I think also though the Sens mentioned that they really liked what he showed at the Erie showcase, and that kind of helped them because they liked what they saw and they thought that projected well into the OHL next season. They liked where that development curve was headed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess again, number one, I saw players on the board at 49 and I'm going, holy crap, the Ottawa Senators could do some damage here. And they took a giant defenseman who didn't play this year, who, like, when I asked around about him with some other people, because I was watching him and I'm going, what, he's a London Knight, so who knows what and pretty much unanimously people were like, I don't know, we'll see what happens.
He's a London Knight.
Like if you turn it, like obviously if you have big players, yes, you can take a big player, and if it works out, they could be very valuable in the NHL, sure. But I don't, again, like you may as well, if it's Ben Roger, like to me, you may as well take anyone who's gigantic and heavy.
Yeah.
And so if that's okay with your second round pick and your third pick off the board, then go nuts. But like, I didn't have him ranked. Most lists I didn't have him ranked, or most lists I tracked didn't have him ranked at all. Corey Pronman had him at 53, which is good for him.
Oh, no. He went 53 spots ahead of where he was supposed to. Okay. So Pronman's draft had him 102.
Okay. Well,
yeah, sorry about
makes
that.
More sense. No, that's fine. It's after 7 p.m. I'm slow.
And the Pinot is flowing.
The Pinot's flowing. Half a glass deep. I'm half a glass.
Hell
wow.
Yeah.
Going hard.
That Magnum is going back.
Tomorrow's gonna be rough. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about Ben Roger. I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's a bad pick, but it certainly would have been the name that wouldn't have been the name that I pick, even based on having seen him a bit this year. I just, again, like, I have a really hard time, especially at 49, looking at all the players available that I have seen so much of and saying, no, throw all that in the trash.
Yeah.
We're taking the 6'4" guy who put on 30 pounds of weight this year and was okay at a tournament thrown together by 19-year-old junior hockey players, which was our first chance to see OHL players in the flesh. And I didn't even think that tournament was like really great hockey. Like it was, It looks like a bunch of kids who hadn't played in a year and were just trying to find their feet. And I don't think that that's good enough to stand on in a top 50 of the NHL draft. So it's, again, I'm in the business of data, and a lot of what I do is based on probabilities. And the Ottawa Senators are looking at all of the evidence and all the probabilities and going, yeah, you don't know crap. Like, you don't know anything. We're going to just throw all that aside and just go with what we want, and hopefully it works out. And maybe he's a bottom pairing guy, sure. And maybe some guys around him that I like turn out to be AHL scoring guys that can't score in the NHL. Sure. That whatever. But I also look at this and go, well, the Ottawa Senators could have also had, Cole Sillinger, Logan Stankoven, and Aatu Ratu. And,
had to do me like that.
Well, I think with Ratu, like the Senators have I know one dedicated Finnish scout, and I think they have a lot of weight when it comes to drafting Finnish players in his say. I mean, they took Lassie Thompson in the first round a couple of years ago.
To be fair, he was playing in the WHL at the time.
He was. That's true. That's a good point. But they also took Järventie last year. And Merilainen. Now, Merilainen was also scouted by Pierre Gruel, but still, at the end of the day, that's two Finnish players taken last draft. Yeah. So I feel like Aatu Ratu didn't have a chance being taken by Ottawa, because if Ruutu didn't really push for this guy to be taken with either of their second round picks, I just don't think that he was a guy that they were going to draft.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I had 49.
Totally
as a casual sitting on my couch, 100%, yeah. I would have been like, yeah, let's take him. I mean, what could go wrong, or what's the risk taking him at 49?
Yeah.
But I think that's probably wise. The Finnish scout for the Sens was like, guys, I'm not feeling it.
And I've spoken to a couple of like people I talked to about him and about Ratu, and the more I talk, the more I see people's rationale, especially people I know in Finland who are a little bit skeptical, but even they were shocked that he fell as far as he did. I know at least a couple of teams that had him as a D&D for one reason or another, but when I look at where Aatu Ratu went, I mean, at 49 is the third guy off your board. Like, even the most conservative of Finnish people that I spoke to were like, at worst, he's probably like a bottom 6 center.
That's what you're getting in.
And at 49, okay, sure. And I was a huge fan of Ratu this year. I think with Ratu, like, if anything, that's the player this year in the draft where I was almost playing in Ottawa Senators mode, where I'm sort of like, okay, yeah, like I accept that everything people are saying about him is true. His scoring is kind of dog poop. He is an inconsistent player. He has been completely stagnant over the last 2 years. But I'm also, like, I've been to Finland. I've met some Scandinavian people. I've spoken to them. They're very different from us. Like, us as North Americans, they're very more insulated, like quiet, and I can see how those personality traits, obviously not painting with a broad brush, but he's been anointed as the next big thing from Finland for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And if he wasn't prepared for that adequately, which we prepare, like Connor Bedard has probably been in classes with advisors and stuff to teach him about how to handle the kind of attention he's going to face since he was like 12, since it was apparent when he was scoring 5 points a game or whatever against 14-year-olds. So he's probably much more well equipped to sort of tune all that out, just play the game, just keep going and do his thing. And with Ratu, like, again, this is a guy who was like over a goal per game when he was like 15, 16 years old. And then I've seen him miss shots from 5 feet in front of the net in the men's pro league level. Like, just sails it over the net into the net, like behind the glass. It's like
the old Cody Ceci.
Exactly. And a goal scorer doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So what the hell is going wrong? He's getting his chances. Like, in my data, he's getting his chances. He's creating shots for his teammates. He's getting his transitions up the ice. He's getting the puck in the offensive zone. So what the hell is going wrong? And to me, I don't know how else to slice it, but I feel like that's a guy who you really need to sort of reboot him. And literally the day he was drafted, he scored 4 goals on international ice.
Yeah.
And like, obviously that's a World Junior Summer Showcase stuff thing. So you can't, obviously, like, Summer Showcase takes are always cold in about 3 months. Like, it's it's one thing.
Other than Jake Sanderson being the best defenseman there, we can,
sure.
That's going to be hot till the day I die. You know what I'm saying?
You can have that one. Sure.
Thanks, King.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, so I think with that player, it's a very strange situation. And again, like, if he's a guy, I had him ranked in the top 20 because I figured if you can get that reprogramming done, like I think Scott Wheeler even did a piece about it where he was like, yep, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. I didn't think anybody was really helping me through it. I dealt with a lot of problems. I fell out of love with the game, and I didn't know what I was doing. I felt aimless, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, yeah, I can tell. Like, you can tell that kind of thing. And when he went down to junior, I said, okay, this guy's too good for junior hockey in Finland. He came back up to the pro league level, and he was still inconsistent, but when he was really good, he was really good. And I'm going, okay, like, maybe some teams D&D'd him because he's like, well, he told us he fell out of love with the game, so why would we want to draft a guy like that in the top round? Because that's terrifying. But I also think that with the Islanders at 52, they said, all right, this is our first pick of the draft, and this guy could be really good, so screw it.
That's such a home run pick too. Just like, it's like such a lob. Like, all they had to do was pick him.
It's low risk.
Exactly.
It's low risk.
I think it's a very much like Lou Lamoriello thing to do. To be, I mean, if he hits his ceiling, they were literally just like sort of gifted like a top line center. And I think that's that's really lucky.
Yes.
And Drift Shade threw out the comment, speaking of Ratu, what do you think the Islanders do with him, and what do you think he ends up being in the NHL? I know we touched on the potential a little bit, but yeah, how do you think the Islanders handle his development?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to put my own hat on, and if I were drafting him, and normally, like, I thought maybe if he landed in, say, like Toronto at 57, I thought, okay, maybe a team like Toronto would just say, if you want, you can stay overseas, but we're comfortable bringing you to the Marlies and just signing you right away, figuring out a way so that we can slide your contract, but you can play with the Marlies like Timothy Liljegren did. Maybe we'll be able to make that happen for you. And it's a reboot, it's a reset. You'd be one of the better young players on that team. We'll see what happens. But if it's the Islanders, they've got Bridgeport, and Bridgeport is not the best place to send your players very much. And like Simon Holmstrom went straight there and didn't have a great year. I'm trying to think of the other ones, but I mean, I don't think Simon Holmstrom was quite ready for the AHL. I figured that Aatu Ratu might be, if you think about it optimistically and like reboot his brain a little and give him a fresh start. But I mean, I'm hopeful that mentally for him, the Islanders are helping him. And I hope that what's happening with him is go back to, if you need to go back to Finland for a year to play pro again, we hope that all the years of pre-draft hype that was hounding you mentally, that's over. Like, you are now a second round pick in the NHL. You're just a guy. So that's what the world thinks of you. Like, go out, go back to Finland, put in the work, figure it out. And maybe that's what you get out of him. That would be my plan if I'm the Islanders specifically, because I don't know about Bridgeport, at least not as for an 18-year-old, and I don't think they have a ton of other Finns that are going to be playing. Maybe Robin Salo, but I don't know. Either way, either decision makes sense to me, but for the Islanders specifically, I think another year in Finland at least is probably the prognosis.
I don't hate that though. Like it kind of makes sense, but it's also a good idea if there is an opportunity to, move on. He can always move on, but at the same time, maybe he could go play in the SHL. Like, stranger things have happened. So
yeah.
Now, people have been saying that, Matt, you so sexy, and debating which one it is. With that, we're going to use that as a transition to go to the super sexy Swede that the Sens drafted at 74, Oliver Johansson. How's that?
Wow, that was an incredible segue. I'm not going to lie to you. Wow. That was really good.
I found a way.
It's a bigger reach than anything the Sens did.
Well, that's okay. Just like the organization we cheer for, we are a fan of reaches, and my jokes especially. So, Oliver Johansson taken at 74th overall in the third round by the Senators. I know a scout that you and I both know, Mikhail Holm. He thought it was a good pick, a bit of a gem if things go well. What was your thoughts on that kind of out of the blue pick by the Sens?
Yeah, I mean, at 74, like, let me see who else was there. I mean, obviously, like, the thing about the NHL draft that's so funny is that there's always, at least for me, relative to my board, like, if I was a one-man scouting crew, Oliver Johansson probably wouldn't be drafted by me. But I do think that he's a very interesting pick at 74 if it's like a team scenario thing, because I think that there's some very interesting traits to his game. Like, I mean, I had guys like Brent Johnson still on the board there, Dylan Duke, Sean Chagall, who else? Those are the big names that were still available that got drafted. And Johansson, I did have him ranked. I had him at 99, which for a 74th overall pick, it's still a bit of a reach, but also he was just a really hard one to get a gauge on because he started the year at the under 18 level, which to me doesn't really mean much in Sweden. Like, it's if you're a pretty good player for your age group at the under 18 level, you're just going to slam it. Like, it's yours to play with. But I did see him a bit at the under 18 level, and I did see 3 of the, I believe, 5 games he played at the Allsvenskan level, and he translated to the men's league level in the second division pretty well down there. He was pretty interesting in the sense that he was pretty inactive most of the time when I saw him on the ice, but he's mobile and pretty skilled. Like, he's pretty unpredictable with his hands and feet together, and he can kind of get around defensemen that way. And he was one of the more active players attempting plays in front of the net that I've tracked this year, and that's against men and the junior competition. So he's a guy who pretty much strictly focuses on making plays off the boards in the offensive zone. But he does look pretty good doing it. Again, like at 74, might not have been the guy where I would have pushed for him. There was a few guys that I had ranked higher. Like I thought Cole Huckins would have made a great Ottawa Senator. Just a
great name,
a big, rangy, skilled
Good hockey
dude.
name.
Maritime kid. Like I thought that, and he went at 77 to the Calgary Flames, but I thought that he was more of that snarl but skilled kind of thing, and I thought that maybe that was the guy they might look at. But Johansson's just a nice change of pace. Again, it's a shot in the dark. Like that's the big thing, is that he's kind of a big swing in the dark. He's kind of an unknown. I had him ranked because of the data that I tracked on him was pretty good, and I thought that the skill and hands and the deception and such was pretty good, that he should deserve a chance to get picked. I was pleasantly surprised to see him go 74, but I was even more surprised that it was the Ottawa Senators out of all the teams that did it. I think he's an interesting bet. I think he's a long ways away. Like he's a few years away. He's going to need to, get more comfortable against men, and he was getting beaten pretty bad, and his offensive or his passing outside the offensive zone was kind of But once he's got the pucks with some space and in the offensive zone, he's a ton of fun to watch, and there might be something there. It's just, again, it's fascinating to me looking at this draft board and saying, a fast rewind a year. Do you think Oliver Johansson goes a spot ahead of Ryder Korzak? Probably not, but here we are. And the draft, like when people ask me, like, who does my team take at 31st overall? Who does my team take it in the second round? Who could be someone really good available in the third round? Like, I could pull names off my list that are in the top 30 and say, well, they might be available in the third round. And people go, well, you're nuts. Well, Dylan Duke went 126th and he was 32nd on my board. So strange things happen all the time. And if teams like a guy, they like a guy. And clearly Ottawa likes Johansson, and I don't think it's ridiculous, I guess.
Fair enough. I thought it was an interesting pick, especially with the Senators going basically all big boys up until that point, to take a swing on a young Swede who had a little glimpse at a higher level, but essentially was more of an unknown. I thought it was really interesting. And I mean, I guess whoever was over in Sweden was yelling through his Zoom call at them like, no, please let me have one. Yeah. But after him, in the fourth round, the Senators took Carson Latimer. And Carson Latimer I'm pretty interested about. I think he has a lot of upside, but again, we'd love to hear your take on him.
He does. I think Carson Latimer is another one of those big swings. It's so funny. Like if a bunch of these guys that Ottawa took were like third and fourth round picks, I'd be like, okay, like that's not bad. Like you got good value if all you had was third and fourth picks. But with Carson Latimer, I mean, he's a big shot in the dark. He was getting more ice time without Dylan Guenther in town when he went to the under-18s, and I thought he looked pretty good with more ice time there. I didn't track any games of him. He was only brought to my attention like literally a month ago, as hey, you might want to check out this guy with Edmonton, and so I did. And he was on my watch list this year, but only because I just had a really limited sample of him. But what I saw, again, that big skill from the right wing, and not necessarily big skill in the sense that he's big, but I mean, like, he's quite a skilled hockey player from the right wing, really creative playmaker, pretty good shot on him as well. I think there's a guy who, if other players with his team graduate out of the Edmonton Oil Kings and he replaces their ice time and he plays a little bit more minutes, you see a really nice bump in his production. Because at 123, like, again, Dylan Duke and Sean Chagall were the only really highly rated players left on my board, but looking at all the other guys that were ranked that went after, like maybe Robert Orr would have been a guy that I might have thought about, Cole Jordan, Jack Barr, but Carson Latimer, based on what I had seen, a skilled winger that has some quickness and pace to his game with creative playmaking, I'll take it. I'll take the chance on that at 123, sure, especially if people who have seen him a lot more than me were like, no, he's sick, and sure, take the chance. But yeah, he's a big swing, but I think he's a relatively reasonable one for one of these sort of skilled wingers that might be able to, carve out a role in the NHL.
Cool. Well, in the seventh round, the Senators took one of the guys who has one of the best names in this draft class for sure, in Chandler Romeo. So what do you think of the big left-handed shot defenseman the Senators took with their final
good
pick?
Name.
He's a big left-hand shot. I don't know. He has no history of scoring anywhere. So I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen him play hockey, so I think I will withhold. He played at the tournament, the hockey showcase tournament or whatever, but I don't know. He was never a guy again, that tournament to me wasn't super valuable. But again, if the Senators look at a guy like that and go 6'5", 205 pounds at 18 years old, didn't play this year, what happens when he's 240 pounds in the NHL? Maybe you get something, sure, okay. Like, it's hard to argue against that line of thinking because it's like you see how the NHL is played in the playoffs and you go, yeah, okay, I get it, but like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of players went undrafted that just went undrafted because they're small, but they're pretty talented. So again, like if your priority is big dudes playing defense and that they're, annoying and mean, like he had 77 penalty minutes in 44 games in the GOJHL and 20 points in 10 games in the OJHL, like, yeah, like if that's what you want, then go nuts. Again, but you can't really split hairs too much about one of the last 30 picks in the draft. So I wish I had more analysis, but
hey, that's totally fair. We could go back to talking about Boucher for like 3 hours if you like.
Oh yeah, kind of Tuesday night.
Well, if you want, there's a couple of maybe not necessarily draft-related questions, but maybe questions you can weigh in on just from your time as a hockey fan, not just a draft analyst. So, Sebastian Marcotte here asked, would you want Eichel in Ottawa, and what do you think would be a fair price?
Oh boy, would I want Eichel in Ottawa? Yeah, why wouldn't you? Who's like, no, I don't want Jack Eichel in Ottawa.
Well, sorry, just to interject.
Crucifier 666 doesn't want him.
Yes. Also, sorry. Beyond that, on Twitter, I've seen people say that if Pinto is involved in a deal for Eichel, that they don't want to have anything to do with it. Which I love Pinto.
Said that? Oh no, not Twitter.
Okay, I love Pinto.
Oh no!
But
what
we're
if we
talking
lose
about
our prospect who might project as like a good second-round center for like one of the best centers in the league? What will we do?
Yeah. So, yeah, basically, I know Crucifier was just saying that in his opinion, or their opinion, I should say, they don't think the contract is worth it. So.
Yeah, it's Jack Eichel. I mean, like, I don't know.
I mean, at worst, he's a top 10 center in the league. At best, he's a top 5.
He's been dragging the Buffalo Sabres. He's never had, like, when he was paired with Jeff Skinner, he made Jeff Skinner a 40-goal scorer.
Yeah.
Like that, you put that guy on a line with pretty much anyone, and he'll do things. And especially down the middle for the Ottawa Senators, like, I like Josh Norris, but if it means trading Josh Norris to get a Jack Eichel, obviously, you don't make that trade unless you go through the rings and say, every goddamn doctor we have and every goddamn doctor in the city of Ottawa thinks that this guy's going to be able to play at 100% again. Like, I get the feeling, based on what I've heard about what's going on in Buffalo, that the medical debate is kind of like a convenient way to postpone the trade, and like a convenient way to.
It's pretty screwed up.
I think it's a nice, convenient way for both sides to politely tell each other they don't want to see each other ever again, but they know that it's complicated and they know that there's a lot of things to work out. Like, I get the feeling that Buffalo knows that there's probably nothing wrong with that surgery, but I think they also know that Jack Eichel is like, get me the hell out of town, So I get the feeling that otherwise, then what's the holdup? Like, they've been going, like, how long does it take to go back and forth and talk to doctors? It's been months. Yeah. And like, at this point, it's put up or shut up one way or the other. So as long as you do that due diligence and you make that deal with Buffalo, and obviously I feel like there's also mechanisms in place that prevent NHL teams from acquiring assets where they've been misled about the status of their health, or they've been misled. So I look at Eichel coming to Ottawa and go, if he's in that trade, if he's coming to Ottawa, he's Jack Eichel, and you have to trust that the Ottawa Senators didn't, like, there's no possible way that Eugene Melnyk is going to pay that guy that kind of money without
assurance,
absolutely absolutely sure that he's going to score 100 points next year. Now, what does it cost to get him? I mean, Buffalo's not doing much to inflate his trade value, but I get I mean, I feel like Eric Brandstrom has 1 foot out the door already, so he's the piece that's in there.
I think you probably need Brandstrom. You need a roster player that probably
like Josh Norris.
Yeah, I think that's a guy they really don't want to give up.
Yeah.
Especially him now being sort of the centerpiece other than Stützle. But I mean, if you're able to swing a deal that it's like sort of Brandstrom, you're giving away Pinto as well.
Well, you're not. Yeah. The thing with Brandstrom is that obviously if there are people watching and they're like, Eric Brandstrom, Eric Brandstrom and Josh Norris, that's way too valuable. Well, Ottawa doesn't seem to think that Brandstrom's very valuable. Ottawa seems to be moving on from him. I don't know what it's going to take.
Down the stretch, they did give him top 4 minutes. Like, he did play more. He was playing on the power play.
But the problem is signing or trading for and then signing.
Yes. So the Holden Holden acquisition and the Delzato acquisitions were very interesting. I more felt like Mete is the odd one out, considering he just filed for arbitration. The center said that they did have his contract, like they were close to being a done deal or whatever after the season ended, and then that didn't come about. So I don't know. I feel like Brandstrom definitely. I think he'll be here to start the season, and I think that they'll give him a legitimate shot playing alongside Zub. At least that's my hope. But yeah, I know that his size being 5'10" does have some question marks on a team that is coached by DJ Smith. So
and he's just offense. And there's a lot of coaches who are just like, I don't care about that on defense.
He did up his physicality too this season, like in the same amount of games.
I'm talking perception, right? I'm talking about the perception of his game, which I think is more important sometimes, not the reality.
Right.
And I think if I'm Buffalo, it might really suck, but a package like Brandstrom, Norris, a first, and a conditional first based on Ottawa making the playoffs or something next year, or Ottawa how far they go in the playoffs or whatever, might be something that makes some kind of sense, that might make it work. Because I don't know, I saw one of the comments here, Brandstrom 2 seconds, and if Pinto's there, you need 50% retention on Eichel's salary. No, if I'm Buffalo, I hang up the phone and go somewhere else. If it doesn't have a first round pick in it, go away. You clearly,
and a blue chip prospect and a roster player.
Shane Pinto has played 1 or 2 NHL games or something. He barely played.
He played 12 games 14. and had 7 points in 12 games. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm mistaken. But I don't mind Shane Pinto.
Yeah.
But if I'm Buffalo, I'm like, okay, Shane Pinto is going to play middle 6 minutes for my team. Cool. He's also unproven. Eric Brandstrom is you don't seem to value him as much as you probably should. So why would I make him a centerpiece of the deal? So
also, they just traded Reinhart to Florida, so that's another center that they need to replace.
Right.
And they got a first for Reinhart. Yeah. And they also got a first for Ristolainen, so I assume they would expect.
If you're Ottawa, you're probably wanting to get away from the draft as the way you're using building blocks for the team. Hey, you're not getting Shane Wright and you're not getting Connor Bedard. You are, you're not going to be, I absolutely do.
You hope so.
But I don't see any other way that you're getting a number 1 center of the caliber of Jack Eichel at his best.
Yeah.
Any other way.
And so if you can,
if it looks like, Brandstrom, if you can get away from not giving away Norris, that's a hell of a 1-2 punch. A couple firsts. I don't have a problem using those sort of futures, especially considering that Eichel is cost controlled for the next however many goddamn years. Yes, Tommy Freestone, Tierney does qualify as a roster player. I just don't think he moves the needle at all.
Hey, apparently, according to Sean Simpson, I think it's the assistant coach or something, or maybe it was the interim head coach for the Sabres, really likes Colin White. So, hey, we'll throw in Colin White. That can be the centerpiece, baby.
Right.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Colin White's one of those. I think Colin White deserves a better chance under DJ Smith, especially after the shit show that was at the start of the season. I think he's good defensively. He just needs to figure out his offensive game.
Now, Driftshade also said, what about Brandstrom, Pinto, Gustafsson, White, and a 2023 conditional first? Now, I think you don't want to tear apart every prospect. I think we should keep Gustafsson, especially after losing Decord to Seattle. I think
And not
Sogard is
taking Wallstedt and Crucifier
Yes.
666. We will get to the Wallstedt.
Yes,
talk.
we're
Don't worry
actually.
about
I was
that.
going to bring that up now, and I was going to say, the Senators didn't take Wallstedt, and it was pretty clear that most people thought the Senators would take a goalie at 10, not just because they would likely be there, but because the value that Jesper Wallstedt or some teams really liked Kosa more, that would give you flexibility in trading someone like Gustafsson or Sogard, because now you have a new blue chip goaltender prospect. It kind of gives flexibility to trade maybe one of those other goalies. And at the end of the day, they didn't draft a goaltender. So do you think that they should have maybe gone that route, or do you think Tyler Boucher was still an okay pick there?
I mean,
well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Do your thing.
I mean, like Matt, I'll answer that.
Yeah.
One's like could be a Vezina winning caliber goalie, and Tyler Boucher's like absolute ceiling is probably a second liner. Like I love Wallstedt so much. And when Kosa went ahead of him, I was like, all right, man, you guys, something. But like he is 6'6", right?
Yeah.
Whereas
And he's
Wallstedt's a measly 6'3", and playing in the third best hockey league in the world. But the WHL is where it's at. So, yeah.
God. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, the Ottawa Senators should have drafted Jesper Wallstedt, but again, like I think it's a matter of priority. I think that the Ottawa Senators are looking for players where they feel like they are a fit for the culture they're looking for. And I know for a fact that Jesper Wallstedt is a person who some teams found him to be a person that does not fit that mold in terms of the sort of hockey man, like, super rock solid mental person who is, just a great guy who's going to kiss babies on the forehead and pat them on the back and all that stuff. Like that's not, I don't think that's Jesper Wallstedt. Like he's all business, and he's a pretty quiet dude and a little bit unconventional because he is Swedish, and sometimes quiet people and Swedish people can be unconventional. Everybody can be unconventional in some way. But
and a goalie.
Those
people are weird too.
Strange. Yeah. But I always go back to like, you can say what you want about all kinds of different stuff with him. You can say, oh, his character is this, his character is that. He said this in an interview, he said this in an interview. But like the fact of the matter is he's an 18-year-old who was playing pro hockey in Sweden and played more than 20 games, which has never happened before. And the last time a draft eligible goaltender played more than 10 games in the SHL when he was draft eligible was 1999. And, like I've spoken to a couple of Swedes and they all say the same thing. Like he's been playing against kids who are 19 years old since he was 14 or 15, and he was very good. And he, like I've watched a lot of European hockey and I've tracked a lot of data in European hockey. European coaches will find pretty much any reason under the sun never to play an 18-year-old or never to touch a 17 or 18-year-old and put them on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
They will literally put them in the lineup to put them on the bench all game. And that to me is like, okay, well, that's even more impressive for Wallstedt, where as a goaltender, they're giving him the starts, they're putting him in the net, and he's not getting shellacked. His second half was not great, but the resume for Wallstedt, I thought he should have been their starter at the World Juniors. He will be this year. I would be stunned if he wasn't. It's as close to a sure thing as you're going to find. Like, unless there's like some kid who wins KHL goaltender of the year at 17 years old or SHL goalie of the year or whatever, and is 6'5", I don't think you're going to find a better bet for goaltending. But again, the draft isn't always, to some teams, it's not about just looking at who the best player at the time is. It's who do we think is going to be the best Ottawa Senator. And if they think that Jesper Wallstedt rubs them in the way where they're like, he's going to hate playing in Ottawa, like if he's that kind of a person where he looks you in the eye and is like, I never will ever play a game in Ottawa, do not draft me, then you can't draft him. Like you can't, that might have happened. Right. I don't know if it happened, but if it did happen, then yeah, the Ottawa Senators shouldn't drafted him. And maybe they think Levi Merolainen and Matt Sogard is just as safe a bet for their future, or Philip Gustafsson in there. Like maybe they think between those 3 guys over the next 10 years, they can find some sort of combination that at least is NHL average. And if you have NHL average goaltending and a big, mean, physical team that will take a lot of penalties and never get called in the playoffs, you can go a long way. And if that's what the Ottawa Senators think they have, and instead they would rather add those guys who will annoy and bang and crash in the playoffs like Tyler Boucher will, with the odd goal here and there, which he can do, then to me, that's maybe a better fit for them. It's, again, like, it's hard to say if that's right or wrong. I think the Minnesota Wild got a great goaltender at 20th overall, and for the Edmonton Oilers to trade down and miss their chance at a goaltender to draft Xavier Bourgault and a guy from Germany who's never played men's hockey, like, okay, cool. Like, great, good for you. The Minnesota Wild have a nice buy low bet on a potential number 1 goaltender for their team, and they've already got Kakkonen. So it's like, great, good for you. But for the Ottawa Senators, their priority just might be completely different.
Right.
And I think to your point about, Maryline and Gustafsson and Sogard, I think out of those 3 guys, you're going to get one of them's going to hit. I think Gustafsson's already showed that he can play in the NHL. It's just a matter of sort of figuring out like where his level of play is, because obviously it was a small sample size. But Sogard came in and put up a 925 save percent in the AHL, and Marylinen's probably going to start at the World Juniors after being a nobody pick. And I remember being like, who? So
where did Gustafsson come from? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Absolutely.
So the Sens traded for him when they traded Brassard to the Penguins. They got Gustafsson back in that trade.
Yeah,
and a first,
that's a tiny bit of business.
A third. Yeah.
Yep.
Tidy bit of business.
It was a pretty nice trade.
Okay, anyway, continue your thought. It was bugging me.
I think, and that's another reason why they probably didn't give up on Gustafsson, just because he was traded for Brassard, and Brassard was traded for Zibanejad. So all of those things sort of connect, and that was the first trade Dorian ever made, was the Zibanejad for Brassard trade. So. It's not great. It's not great. But I think
that happened. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're not revisiting.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And just to Drift Shade just said, why aren't we dunking on the Flame or the Oilers more?
We can dunk on the Oilers all you want.
Honestly, and like you just talked about the draft. The draft is fine. The Oilers as an organization and what they do on a daily basis with Ken Holland is laughable.
I want a genuine question for the room. Are the Edmonton Oilers the worst team to have the best player in their sport ever?
I feel so bad for McDavid.
Is there another team with a player so good for their time, but the rest of the team is so historically bad?
Also Eichel? Damn, that 2015 top 2. That's just rough.
But Eichel hasn't had, like, McDavid was like 140 point pace this year.
Yeah.
Mike Trout. I just saw Mike
Trout. That's
Mike
a
Trout
really
is
good
a great
one.
example.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. But
and Leon Draisaitl. Yeah, that's true. You have McDavid and Draisaitl on the same team. 200 point.
And I was going to say LeBron, but LeBron won a championship with nobody on that team.
Yeah.
I feel like the Oilers, and I have an uncle who is a massive Oilers fan, and
condolences.
Yeah, and I said I've been staunch about this. I said if Dorian was the GM for the Oilers and Ken Holland was the GM for the Sens, oh man, it would be vastly different. I think if Dorian had Cates' money, he'd be like they'd be fine. But Ken Holland, when they signed him, was not the GM to do what they needed him to do. And now he's even so far away from what they need him to do, but they're just like, well, we're too invested. He's Ken Holland. He's won cups. It's like, yes, you did this with how many Oilers that have won a cup. So
isn't Ken Holland the guy who signed Abdelkader to like a 7-year contract?
Yeah, man. Ken Holland is not a good GM anymore. And
it's hard. I mean, like it's all these. I mean, this year's free agency was a time, and he went out and in about a week added 5, 6, 7, 8, like $14 million to his team's payroll. I don't think Duncan Keith is retained.
No,
yeah,
it's
no,
not.
it wasn't. That
So-
is. Oh my god.
Oh God, Matt's going up.
Like, I remember texting my uncle. I was like, if it's retained, it could be not as bad. They gave up a prospect and a pick for Duncan Keith's terrible contract. And then they were like, oh yeah, you know, some of the players, they played him in the bubble and they said he was bad, or like he was hard to play against, sorry. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, did you guys watch him at all? Like, have you guys genuinely just sat down?
I mean,
oh my God! And
at the end of
Metcalf
the day,
Shooter just reminded me that they signed Cody Ceci as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
I was just gonna
God.
say they went out and brought in Tyson. I mean, Cody Ceci was like okay this year. He wasn't.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always felt that with Toronto, he wasn't as bad as people said he was. I thought obviously you don't pick him up to score points. Like
Yeah.
that meme of him missing the net by about 30 feet from the blue
That's
line.
what I was talking about with the Ratu thing.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I saw that live and I just laughed. Like it was hilarious. But like I was like, did that just really happen? Like that's amazing. But I don't know. Like I thought that he was on track to like being something okay. But again, Duncan Keith could retire at the end of this season. He could retire 6 games into this year. If it's a catastrophic failure and he retires, that cap hit is just gone. Right? Like that's the way his contract is structured. He signed it before he was 35. He can just bail.
Yeah.
And obviously it would be dumb because you traded assets to get a guy who might play 20 games for you, realize he's cooked and quit.
Yeah.
But again, like it's these self-inflicted wounds that Ottawa doesn't seem to make because they don't really have the funding to do it. But at least you're not spending, what is it, $14 million over the next 2 seasons.
And one of
each.
them's on like Zach Hyman, who
Zach
I have
Hyman.
nothing hugely wrong with
Neither
Zach
do
Hyman.
Yeah.
But
Hard
like
miles.
that contract's going to bite them in the ass. But one of the biggest things Ken Holland has not done is getting a goalie.
Yeah.
Like, how many years do you have to just
Alex
like?
Stalock.
I thought he would be the savior, you
Mike
know?
Smith, your extension. Let's go, baby.
But I just can't believe that every single time, every single time they have the opportunity to go out and get a goalie, they're like, oh, let's just go with Mike Smith. Like, it's sick. Like, I believe they have a really, really good goalie prospect in Russia right now. But I think, but he's still a little bit away.
Well, he's also 23 now. Like, he's not young.
Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly.
He's-
And Crucifier, to be fair, he did have a good season.
Yeah.
But look at what happened in the playoffs. They all shat the bed.
It goes beyond that. It's like how many goalies into their 40s really lead a contending team deep in the playoff runs? Like what?
It's gonna happen in
Was it
Buffalo
Dwayne
with Craig Anderson.
Oh yeah, true. Let's go.
I love Craig. Love
anyway,
that guy.
How can you not?
We appreciate your time, but we don't want to keep you all night. Okay, one last question from Drift Shade, and then we don't want to keep Will here hostage all night. Drift Shade asks, Will, what do you think Ottawa needs to do to land out of the mean doghouse of the NHL?
I think we're gone. I don't think like
Yeah,
we don't get dunked on that much. I think
What?
it's Edmonton now.
The Ottawa Senators draft strategy is a wild experiment against the grain. That's one thing. That is true.
Yeah.
The other thing is Eugene Melnyk is just a meme on his own, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to change that. The owner of the team himself is a character.
Yeah.
And that's
He's
going to stick
literally
with you.
Mr. Krabs.
Yeah, like you could win the Stanley Cup and people would still be like, yeah, but Melnyk is your owner.
Yeah.
Like you'd be annoying because you're like, yeah, but we just won the Stanley Cup. But we're like, yeah, but think about all the entertainment we've had.
Yeah.
But I will also say though, like, I have a lot of respect for what the Ottawa Senators have actually managed to do. Like, they down the stretch last year seemed to really sort of come together once they trusted
10-2-1, baby.
Right, like I thought they turned a bit of a corner. I thought they were looking pretty good, and the culture with the fans that they're building, and this just like 2 middle fingers right in your face kind of attitude is really kind of cool. And in Canadian hockey, like in Canadian pro hockey, you don't get that much. You get a lot of teams who want to be that, like the Calgary Flames, I feel like want to be that.
Yeah.
But just from an organizational standpoint and like embracing it from top to bottom, they don't. Whereas with Ottawa, that sicko meme is going to be ingrained in my head for the rest of my life.
Like when your coach, our coach did it in an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they play that when they go on the power play. It's like the Sens are on the power play, and then it's DJ Smith going, yes, ha, yes.
Yeah. So that I have a ton of respect for. And I think people who like are just dunking on the Senators, like it's easy to do it right now because their draft was bonkers. It's easy to do that. But I think in general, like once the NHL season starts, like I think it's an example of like we might need to be on Twitter less. Because I think that in the big picture of things, most people who have their heads on straight go, it's really funny to laugh at the Ottawa Senators sometimes because of their owners and they hired Pierre Maguire. Like, how do you not laugh at them for hiring Pierre Maguire? After all these years of watching him just do whatever he's doing on TV, the Ottawa Senators went, that's our guy. And I'm like, okay, like, let's see how this goes. You know, I wasn't the person who was like, what the hell is Pierre Maguire doing taking some job from someone who deserves it? I'm going, they hired Pierre Maguire. This is going to be awesome. So I don't see it. I don't see it as like that they're the dumpster fire of a franchise that they, you know, it's hard to argue that they weren't that at one point.
Yeah.
But like they do seem to be turning a corner of being a team that's this like scrappy underdog, like random group of dudes who just everybody doesn't think they're any good. And the interesting thing will be once everybody gets expectations, that will be the turning point, I think, with the Ottawa Senators, where it's like, okay, you had that time. And let me tell you, I live in Toronto and I went through that phase here of like, oh my God, these guys are fast and skilled and fun and young and really talented. It doesn't take very long for fans to start to go,
all right,
okay, now
let's
what?
deliver.
Like, we got to do something here. And I just think that right now, the Senators have a decent group of players, but they still don't have that, like, you know, like they don't have that knockout top end player. Like Tim Stützle is a very good player, but I don't think you can just win with Tim Stützle. And they have a lot of, you know, Brady Tkachuk is also really good, but I also feel like there needs to be a little bit more.
Right.
So I don't know. But I like the world they've built. And even, you know, and it's a world where even if they do kind of struggle, you can still lean into it. But yeah, I respect it a lot because I think especially for Canadian NHL teams, it's kind of hard to build from the organization out in terms of like what you want people to perceive you as and have everyone believe it. Whereas now everyone's like, okay, I know when the Ottawa Senators come to town, I know what they are. You know, and I know they're kind of their meme value and like how impressive that is. But yeah, so I commend them for that. It just remains to be seen on how much success their roster construction will find them over the next few years or whatever. I mean, I'm relatively optimistic, especially watching them down the stretch, but down the stretch is one thing. But a couple more seasons and we'll see where we're at.
And a season against an Atlantic division, you know, whereas it's not all Canadian teams and you don't get to feast on Calgary every night.
Like,
so
they played Tampa 0 times.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh boy.
Just go ahead and chalk 5 losses, 5 in the loss column.
You say that, but now they're going to win all 5.
Yeah.
You say that now. They're going to win all 5 now.
It's like that meme of SpongeBob coming in naked, just like, oh man.
And the Sens won't have to play Edmonton 9 times. So hey, that's 0-9 that they won't have this season.
Yeah, and as long as we just, I think the roster makeup did look really, really solid at the end, and you know, guys like Gustafsson, and Batherson and Norris and Stützle and all of those guys really like showed up. And I guess I have one final question for you, Will. I know if you, as of right now, who's your favorite Sens prospect?
Ooh, okay.
Okay. I mean, Tim Stützle is just a ton of fun, but he's kind of not really a prospect so much anymore. I'm also killing time before I pull up a list because I don't want to miss anyone good.
Yeah, fair.
But like they kind of draft off my board a lot, which is totally cool. I mean, I don't claim to be a soothsayer. Yeah, Drake Batherson does not count anymore. I really want Logan Brown to get a fair shake. It's about time.
Somebody brought up Sokolov in chat, but I know you're not as high on Sokolov as some Sens fans are.
Well, I don't know.
I think at this point, like everybody just sort of loves him because of the vibes. Like he's a really good dude.
He seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He the thing about him is that he's a shooter, and he scores a lot this year on the power play. And his defensive game is poor. That is a big reason why he did not get drafted. Was basically like all of the things he did was basically give me the puck and I'll score, which is fine, and you can get away with that for quite a while. But I feel like in the NHL there's question marks. But to answer the question after a long overdue wait, I mean I'm still a fan of Eric Brandstrom, but he's played 63 games. Yeah. So I'm just gonna spit out a name. I mean, okay, here we go. I'm a big fan of Jake Sanderson. I think he's a guy who, again, at 5th overall last year, I would not have picked. But it's easy to say now that because of what happened with him in COVID. But like Marco Rossi and Tim Stützle on the same team would be horrific. But Jake Sanderson, I gave him credit in the sense of like he was a very well refined defensive player, extremely mobile, good puck carrier. A lot of things were a benefit to his game, but I don't think I really quite gave enough credit to just how much there might be there to unlock. And I just love watching him play. Like I just think he's a ton of fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful skater on his feet. He's when you see a tall guy who can move like that, even if his impact on the game is not like otherworldly, like I don't think he's a top pair defenseman in the NHL, but I think he's a second pair guy who will be very good in that role. He could kill penalties. He could quarterback a second power play. Like you're not going to take Thomas Chabot off your first unit power play, right? So whatever. But as a rangy two-way guy that can play defense first and carry the puck, he's a ton of fun to watch at that. And I think that there's a lot to like with him. And in terms of like just a general favorite, like at a certain point, I kind of just go into who do I just like watching the most. When people ask me questions like that, it's not so much like who is the best, because best is such a subjective word. Like, what does it mean? So when I look at Sanderson, I see a player that I just really enjoy watching, and I think that that's a player that I'll always, if I'm watching the Senators, like I'll always have an eye on him when he does come over and play.
Hell yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Will. I know we've kept you for a while, but we appreciate it. Yeah. Love talking hockey with you, and thanks for your insight on the Sens. Is there anything you want to plug before you depart?
Oh, God. Well, I'm supposed to be on break, but you can follow me on Twitter and follow me on YouTube. There won't be much going on there for a little while, but the Holinka Gretzky Cup's going on, so I guess I'm already falling behind. But you can follow me there. I also write for McKean's Hockey, so you can follow my work on that site as well. If you want to financially support me, I run a Patreon campaign where you get a whole bunch of special goodies and tools and fun toys you can play with if you're a prospect geek just like me. So you can check those out at patreon.com/scouching, and that's about it for now.
And do you still do your Wednesday live streams, or is it
off season? I'm off. Yeah. What would I say?
He's off the clock, man. Let him
What would
go.
I say? Who's good at the Holinka? I don't know, and it doesn't matter.
Who's good at the Holinka? This Pinot Grigio. That's
yeah. We'll see if anything comes up in later in the off season, but like right now, I don't know. It's been nonstop work on the prospect side since the 2018-19 season, basically.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Or no, the beginning of 19-20. So that's quite a while.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody in chat who threw their questions our way. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. So this is hopefully the first of many, and we're glad that Mr. Will here could join us. So
I'm never coming back.
It's the your venti thing, isn't it? Just okay.
Yeah, it's all the Shane Pinto takes. I just can't handle it.
It's because he's just so damn pretty,
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's those eyes every time. All right, thanks. Will. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one, boys.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
All right. Well, thank you to Will for joining us. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. it's been a ride. It's been a long night. So yeah, thank you. You can find us on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, the Senstennial Podcast. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, wherever you want to follow us. I'm pretty active on the Sens Discord, so if you're on there, you can shoot me a message. I'm always down to chat and talk hockey. So yeah, from our crew to everybody watching, thank you, and have a good night.
Bye.
Go
everybody.
Sens, go! Go Sens, go!
Go Sens, go, baby.